I am Kesten Rono, and you are here for day 13 of A Course in Miracles. Thank you so much for being here again. I am extremely grateful that we've been able to make it even this far in this practice together. I hope you've been able to try on the principles and exercises each day. And if you haven't, I think that's okay. But I've been discovering that I have been able to reduce the weight, the association, the attachment that I've had to my thoughts and upsets and items around me. That taking a step for the sake of the step, that allowing myself to engage in this practice, both of sharing with you here as well as accepting the words that are in this book and trying on an idea one day at a time for a minute or less than a minute for a few times a day, or reviewing the videos that I share just to be curious. I found that setting aside understanding while at the same time having a discussion with you, I suppose with myself, um, and wrestling intellectually with some of the ideas here. I mean, these are words that are written down that I am trying to absorb in my mind, I suppose, as if I am learning something. And the words themselves are asking me to relax my grip on the way that I have come to see the world. And that this process does not need to be threatening. That what is making me upset is the way that I might be holding on for dear life to a truth that I've assigned to the world that is potentially giving me some kind of structure. And by insisting that I somehow know best, even though, as we've discussed, I have to admit that I've never known how something is going to work out. I cannot plan for what I cannot see. And fundamentally, therefore, I'm aware that I am constantly entering into the unknown. And I've placed the unknown at some time in the future. But this book is giving me a new perspective, which is ultimately why we are here to try on a new perspective. This book has given me a new perspective to see that the unknown is right now. And we've spent 12 days stripping meaning from everything around us. And this idea that we live in the unknown rather than we are moving into the unknown completely changes the idea of our upsets, of my upsets. I think that it's possible that I'm not alone, that we know what it is like to be anxious about the future. How can we plan for something? It's the idea that we plan for something, that we think we gain some kind of control that gives us some safety into the future. It's like we are able to trick ourselves into believing that we know how something is going to work out because we've done it before, which means we're living in the past and expecting that to be true into the future. But we know that the past is not a predictor of the future. Not assuredly, certainly not every time. And that right there, that volatility, is what makes investment in life exciting. So I think something very rare, something very special, something very magical is being offered to us. And while it seems like it might be taking away the meaning that we've assigned to ourselves and the world around us, it's offering us some infinite possibility by pulling the unknown into the present. It's like the present is shaped as the unknown. The more we are able to see that it is our insistence that the past must create a truth around us. So I suppose one way of saying that, according to this text, is that God's voice and its specific direction is revealed the more we accept that we have no control over how to even listen to it. Yesterday, we were saying, I think I live in some version of this world, and that I am upset because what I see is meaningless. And we can review the exact words in a minute, but something is changing within us. Something is changing within me by accepting this meaninglessness for exactly its face value, meaninglessness. And it's creating the opportunity for us to be able to recognize our thoughts as miracles, this thing that is actually creating life itself. The thought, the miracle. Miracles mean life, and God is the giver of life. This empty space, this nothingness, here only on day 13, having only reviewed 12 days together, is already opening up this portal of consideration that maybe at the end of this year, still each day being in the present, of course, and possibly even understanding that idea even more, even though understanding is not really what we're even doing here. We're just practicing. But maybe, for sure, maybe for sure, we are going to be supremely confident in the meaningless of what's around us. And if it is meaningless, it is unknown. And we are somehow existing in the unknown rather than moving towards it. And therefore, our upsets about what is unknown, or the upsets about what we've carried forward from the past to be able to paint the present, they evaporate. That feels extremely powerful. There's some truth, like a true truth. And we are allowed to believe that for sure we will be able to recognize that truth. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for the opportunity to express myself and try on these ideas. And thank you for trying them on yourself. I truly believe there's an opportunity for radical change. And if we are changing, we will no longer be the same. So may we accept trying on these perspectives. And may we believe that they leave us fuller, even as we attempt to remove more of the ideas we have assigned to them and ourselves. Okay. Principle 13. Principle 13 reads, miracles are both beginnings and endings. They thus alter the temporal order. So, miracles alter the temporal order by being both beginnings and endings. They are always affirmations of rebirth, which seem to go back, but really go forward. They undo the past in the present and thus release the future. Okay. I think it's funny that, or serendipitous, or beautiful, or natural, subconscious, that I was just discussing time. And this principle seems to be very rooted in time. Let's see if we can break it down a little bit together. Miracles are both beginnings and endings. Okay, so in previous lessons, I was working through the idea that, well, love is the source of miracles and miracles are expressions of love. And that paradox was a little bit confusing, and I was trying to map it out, reaching for understanding through the practice. And here we just see plainly that miracles are both beginnings and endings. Well, if miracles do not matter, and if we are consciously focused on the miracle itself and controlling it, then we're missing the whole point and we're misguided. So, how could the source of miracles be love, and how could they also be expressions of love? Wouldn't that mean that they're technically expressions of their own source? Well, here we see that idea more solidified. Miracles are both beginnings and endings. Okay, maybe we don't understand, but we'll accept this principle for now. They thus alter the temporal order. Well, what is the normal temporal order? Well, I suppose it's that something happens and then that item moves to the past in our filing cabinet. There is a future set of possibilities which we cannot fully predict. And as things happen, we are moving towards the future. And those we believe, as we experience them, move right past us in the present to the past. I suppose that would be the temporal order. But here we are recognizing that somehow we've been carrying the past into the present, which I suppose is also a weird alteration of the temporal order. But miracles springing from love and expressing love represent both a beginning and an ending, possibly at the same point. Some version of a cycle, a circle. A miracle is supposed to be happening all the time, after all. It's a natural process, and if it's not happening, something has gone wrong. If we see it as a circle for now, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe it's not a circle whatsoever. Maybe it just is. But maybe for us to perceive a miracle happening, like the miracles we're told about in different texts, well, I suppose it has to be missing to be fulfilled, which would therefore imply that it actually has to have an arc to it, right? We know that miracles are transfers from people who, or something that temporarily has more, to those who temporarily have less. So there is some kind of exchange happening, and yet the miracle is both the beginning and the ending. We know that when we give love, we receive love, or that we are able to reverse somehow the laws of physics. So something interesting is happening here where miracles represent both the beginning and the ending. And that is a little bit mind-boggling compared to I was young and tomorrow I'll be older. That would violate the principles of miracles. I somehow am emerging from love, expressing love, which is creating love, which is the source of miracles. And so there is this opportunity for reciprocal flow. That sure sounds like abundance to me. Access to some kind of source that, if we are just allowing it to happen, we're never believing that we have to monitor it, to consciously control it, that it is constantly cycling and always available. And if this principle of energy can, be neither created nor destroyed, well, that would stand true here, it seems. And this idea of being able to cycle from love to love, from feeling an excess and then providing it to some area where there's a lack, seems very fulfilling. And in this sense, I can see the invitation to give all that we have, to give away our love, because we are abundant and we're worthy of feeling that love. So miracles are both beginnings and endings. They thus alter the temporal order. They are always affirmations of rebirth. Affirmations of rebirth. Miracles mean life, and God is the giver of life. Well, that's a birth. But what is a rebirth? A rebirth is coming back into some pre-existing state, but we had already existed. Beginnings and endings, some kind of cyclical flow. They are always affirmations of rebirth, which seem to go back. It's like we're starting over. We believe we're starting over somehow, possibly, but really go forward. So we are moving forward. We believe we are being rebirthed, maybe borrowing the idea of reincarnation just for our imagination. At the end of this life, I will re-become something else that feels like a miracle. Yet I am still moving forward. Well, moving forward seems to be like the idea of the normal temporal order, but I suppose I'll have to relax into this idea as well. They are always affirmations of rebirth, which seem to go back but really go forward. They undo the past, which is what we've been focusing on here. We are attempting to undo the path through our thoughts about our thoughts. And miracles are thoughts. Our thoughts, therefore, undo the past. They undo the past in the present, arriving into this presence through the acceptance of the meaningless of our thoughts, of the meaningless of the world, which we've painted from the past. They undo the past in the present and thus release the future. I think that it's important that I sit with this. I think it's important that you sit with this. But one idea that seems to be true based off of what we've been discovering so far was that once we can accept this nothingness, then we have the prerequisite for true vision, true sight, that we are speaking over God. But when we get rid of our own ideas, of our own voice, we make space for His. That there is something else to discover and be created. And I suppose that's what the future is. Miracles are thoughts, miracles are expressions of love, miracles are both beginnings and endings. Maybe we don't need to understand yet, right? We're here for a practice, what this really means, but we can accept that somehow they are altering the temporal order. They undo the past. Miracles are thoughts. Miracles are expressions of love. So our thoughts, our expressions of love, undo the past in the present, right? As we truly become into the present, and thus release the future. I don't know if that means release us to a future or release the future from needing to be, but we'll just leave it as it is for now. Miracles are both beginnings and endings. Okay. I am willing to try this idea on today. Miracles are both beginnings and endings. They thus alter the temporal order. They are always affirmations of rebirth, which seem to go back but really go forward. They undo the past in the present, and thus release the future. Whew. Lesson 13. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. Today's idea is really another form of the preceding one, except that it is more specific. as to the emotion aroused. Actually, a meaningless world is impossible. Nothing without meaning exists. Okay, nothing without meaning exists. Everything has meaning. Everything has meaning. So even the lessons we've been doing are not true per se, possibly as we have understand them. Everything must actually have meaning, and supposedly what we've been doing is relaxing the meaning that we have applied to something, making space instead for God's voice to direct us very specifically to discover this meaning. A meaningless world is impossible. Nothing without meaning exists. However, it does not follow that you will not perceive something that has no meaning. It does not follow that you will not perceive something that has no meaning. Okay, so it does follow that we will perceive something that has meaning. I'm confused, but it does not follow that you will not perceive something that has no meaning. Let's say it this way. You will not perceive something that has no meaning. Okay. You will not perceive something that has no meaning. Therefore, something that is meaningless cannot be perceived. That's what this is saying. Something that is meaningless cannot be perceived, which is why a meaningless world is impossible. Nothing without meaning exists. Everything has meaning. We need things to have meaning such that we can even perceive them. On the contrary, you will be particularly likely to think you do perceive it. Wow, okay. I hope I'm not tripping you up here, but let's repeat this. A meaningless world is impossible. Nothing without meaning exists. However, it does not follow that you will not perceive something that has no meaning. On the contrary, you will be particularly likely to think you do perceive it. Okay, so we are going to be inclined to believe that we perceive something with or without meaning. I'm confused. Let's see if we can read on and find our way. Recognition of meaningless arouses intense anxiety in all these separated ones. It represents a situation in which God and the ego challenge each other as to whose meaning is to be written in the empty space which meaningless provides. The ego rushes in frantically to establish its own ideas there, fearful that the void may otherwise be used to demonstrate its own unreality. And on this alone, it is correct. Okay. God on one side, his voice, ego on the other, presumably ours, our voice, writing a truth which upsets us. If we are able to accept meaningless, we will find God's voice instead and offer us the true truth. Offer us, I suppose, meaning. The ego rushes in frantically to establish its own ideas, again in quotes here, meaning that they are likely meaningless ideas. They are constructions, building our safety net, our world around us, so that we have something to cling on to that we can be for sure is there, but creates upsets. Fear. Fear is the reason that the ego is coming to write these codes, build these walls. The ego is fearful that the void, the nothingness, the ego is fearful that the void may otherwise, if it doesn't speak up, be used to demonstrate its own unreality. Aren't we all afraid of not existing? A funny idea since we exist, and whatever exists, exists. But we're often inclined, I believe, to believe that consciousness is in the body. But I ask you, have you ever considered the idea that the body is in consciousness itself? That your existence exists. That's what existence is. It exists. How can you threaten existence itself? It exists. So the ego, though, is coming in. It's some kind of design that is coming in to create a reality that says, possibly, that consciousness is in the body. And without me, you will not exist. The ego is fearful that the void, if it's not filled with ideas that it creates, challenging God to say, I know best, even though we never know how anything works out. The ego is fearful that the void may be used to demonstrate that it is not real. And the text here is saying that on this alone, on this one idea, that the void will demonstrate that the ego is unreal. On this idea, the ego is correct. And this is suggesting something that we learned before, that as we discover nothingness, as we discover meaning and meaningless, as we discover nothingness, well, nothingness will include no ego. I suppose that's an ego death, which would look like our death, everything that we believe we are, everything that we see around us. This is also hinting that we are literally creating what is around us, or at least the meaning of it. If we start to erase this meaning, we will recognize that we will die. Our egoic hold will die. And this text is saying that, yeah, definitely, for sure, in nothingness, there will be no ego. That's what nothingness is. The ego will be erased. And so, therefore, it is always fearful that if we notice that its ideas are not real, the ego will cease to exist. And then what? God will have won this challenge here in quotes. I doubt God is ever challenging the ego. Perhaps the ego is challenging God, but it's probably running a race, it seems like, against itself. I wonder then if it ever runs out of energy. It seems that by being here, that process may be inevitable because you and I are trying on an idea that says possibly, oh no, what if the way that I've been seeing the world, I've been constructing myself, and that I've been applying this meaning, which is creating my own fear and anxiety and worry and depression and shame, anger, violence. I'm upset because I see a meaningless world. I am upset. My ego is upset. It's fearful. Of course it's upset. Because the world around us, should it be meaningless, then I will cease to be real. I, ego, am desperately clamoring to convince my own self that my ideas must exist. Because if I'm not creating my reality, my ego isn't creating my reality, then someone else is. And so therefore it's scared of God. And if God is love and everywhere all around us, it's simply waiting for us to accept our own forgiveness. So may we give this ego love, and may we receive love in return. It is essential, therefore, that you learn to recognize the meaningless and accept it without fear. If you are fearful, it is certain that you will endow the world with attributes which it does not possess, and crowd it with images that do not exist. So interesting. We live in a world of social media and AI. It's fear often that creates the most activity online. It gets us the most excited. And we lose sight of what is important in our lives and begin fighting with each other. And all the while, this other technology is getting better and better and better about creating images and ideas and stories that do not exist. Not in the way that we think physical items exist, at least. I suppose digitally they exist. but they don't exist in the way that we want to say that's real. So we actually can scroll through things designed to make us feel fearful with ideas that actually do not exist, but we are so certain that they are real. And the better this technology gets, the more that we engage into this fear. It's a trap. Social media itself already being designed for attention, confusing attention when we really desire connection. We believe we are finding connection, but we are receiving attention, outsourcing our ideas to other people with perceived authority, falling victim to likes and the notifications associated with them, all the while being served up something designed to sell us, literally sell us advertisements. And the best way to keep us coming back, ironically, is with fear. How much of your social media is love? I'm sure that some of these feeds, of course, are tailored towards different exercises, practices, foods, but a lot of the excitement we see on the news is fear. And a lot of the excitement that trickles down through politics and different ideologies and through social media is fear. I don't know if you watch something that maybe is violent and you can feel your cortisol, the fight or flight response kicking in until we get so wrapped up in the story. Even though we were sitting here the whole time, these things don't actually exist directly in front of us. And on top of that, there are ways of showing us things that simply do not exist themselves. We are actually living in some parallel of the same idea. So may we relax our fear, welcome more meaningless, discover more love through miracles, and offer that to those around us, and paradoxically receive love ourselves. Miracles are healing after all. And so if we are willing to try this practice on, perhaps we just offer more healing and allow people to relax their own egos and realize that it need not be so fearful to accept the unknown, to accept nothingness, to accept meaningless, and that paradoxically, perhaps we discover new meaning in the form of real truth. It is essential that you recognize the meaningless and accept it without fear. One quote I remember hearing is, "If you want to be a medicine man, you cannot be afraid." We are entering spaces all the time in our lives that we cannot fully predict. And it's very simple that we would want to be, it's very natural that we would want to be fearful, but that is the ego itself believing that it can battle God to dictate with its own voice what is true when it is screaming in desperation to build a safety net, to build walls around it because it is afraid of what is out there, when all we need to do instead is relax and realize that this meaningless is a safe place and that truth resides inside of it. And we're blinding ourselves by our own ideations of truth from whatever we've experienced in the past. Accept it without fear. If you are fearful, it is certain that you will endow the world with attributes which it does not possess and crowd it with images that do not exist. To the ego, illusions are safety devices, as they must also be to you who equate yourself with the ego. Illusions of safety. And we are falling victim to them when we believe we are our egos rather than connected to our Creator through prayer. The exercises for today, which should be done about 3 or 4 times for not more than a minute or so at most each time, are to be practiced in somewhat a different way from the preceding ones. With eyes closed, repeat today's idea to yourself. Then open your eyes and look about you slowly. We are going to say, I am looking at a meaningless world when we open our eyes. Repeat this statement to yourself as you look about. Then close your eyes and conclude with, a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. Okay, so with our eyes closed, we're going to repeat the idea. A meaningless world engenders fear. Please close your eyes and just listen. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. Now open your eyes and say, I am looking at a meaningless world. Close your eyes, please. Repeat after me. A meaningless world engenders fear. Again, a meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. Now open your eyes and look about and repeat after me, looking around slowly. I am looking at a meaningless world. I am looking at a meaningless world. I am looking at a meaningless world. A meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. Please say this with me. A meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. One more time, please say this with me. A meaningless world engenders fear because I believe I am in competition with God. If we can reflect on the exercise, we are putting ourselves in the perspective of our ego, believing that we are in competition with God and that our ideas are creating some illusion of safety. Well, we believe they're creating safety, but it's an illusion. And a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. The ego rushes in frantically to establish its own ideas, fearful that the void may otherwise be used to demonstrate its own unreality. And on this alone, it is correct. The ego is afraid that if it discovers meaningless, that if you discover meaningless, the ego will cease to exist. And it is correct. You may find it difficult to avoid resistance in one form or another to this concluding statement, which of course was a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. Whatever form such resistance may take, remind yourself that you are really afraid of such a thought because of the vengeance of the enemy. What it's talking about, of course, is God's wrath. But vengeance here in quotes and enemy in quotes, we have created an idea of fear. We are living in fear because we are worried we will not exist. And it's true. As we perceive ourselves, we will not exist as we discover nothingness. And we have set up the scenario where God will exact vengeance on us, when really, He is the creator of life and prayer connects us with that creator. And love creates miracles, and miracles mean life. Meaning, accepting love actually creates life. So it's a trick that we believe we will not exist, or that we will find death, or that God is some enemy looking to exact vengeance upon us. It's a trick we are creating for ourselves. And in fact, this exercise is trying to suggest to us that as we relax, we discover love and open the door to the source for miracles to both be beginnings and endings. Perhaps it's worth opening just to be able to contemplate what it is like to reverse physics or change the temporal order. You are not expected to believe the statement at this point, and will probably try to dismiss it as preposterous. Maybe you feel this way the longer I talk. Note carefully, however, any signs of overt or covert fear which it may arouse. This is our first attempt at stating an explicit cause and effect relationship of a kind which you are very inexperienced in recognizing. Do not dwell on the concluding statement, and try not even to think of it except during the exercise periods. That will suffice at present. So, our present should be not even thinking. Our present should be just doing this practice. And perhaps I've already added too much thinking. So let's just review the statements exactly as they are. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. That with your eyes closed. Eyes open, and we will say, I am looking at a meaningless world. A meaningless world engenders fear. I am looking at a meaningless world. And finally, a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. A meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. Whew. What is this saying directly? You are not in competition with God. You do not need to be fearful. I do not need to be fearful by accepting nothingness. May you feel relaxed. May you feel at peace. May you calm your resistances. Do not dwell on any of these statements and try not even to think of them, except during the exercise period when you're repeating them. A meaningless world engenders fear because you think you are in competition with God when you are not. That means we're in harmony with God. And may you feel God's love and make space for His voice. And may I do the same. I am Kesten Rono, and thank you so much for stretching yourself and your ideas of yourself to relax with me and accept God and love and the process of miracles into your life. I'll see you here tomorrow for day 14 of our exploration of A Course in Miracles. Be well.